everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Between Two Layers. I'm Carly Reilly, joined as always by Robbie Ferguson, co-founder and president of Immutable. Robbie, what is up, man?
What's up, Carly? Good to be here. Just got back from Dubai last week, actually, and then off to Hong Kong tonight.
The world tour continues. You need a map at this point. We need like a Robbie tracker where we can all go online and see, your world travels.
It's definitely not too healthy, but...
In any case, we've got a great show today. We're going to talk about the latest and greatest news in Web3 gaming. We've got our community spotlight where we take a question from you, the Immutable community. I sat down for an awesome conversation with Kieran Warwick, who is the co-founder of Illuvium, to talk all things Illuvium, one of the most exciting games coming out of Web3 gaming in a time that's very exciting for Web3 gaming. So that is saying something. And then, of course, we'll have a Robbie final thoughts. We're going to dive into all of it right now. But if you have been enjoying this content, please consider subscribing to the channel, commenting below. We love getting your feedback, and of course, liking the video if you enjoy it. All right, Robbie, let's dive in. Web3 gaming feels like the meta right now. I think you had a DeFi meta at one point. Last cycle was arguably the broad category of like the NFT meta. And now my timeline seems to have this consensus that Web3 gaming is where it's at for this next cycle.
Yeah, it's interesting. Because we're not in a bull run. I'd say at best we're in late winter. And this could easily be a bull trap. I'm not here to wave a magic wand over predicting markets. I think it is likely we will enter a bull market in the next 18 months, like a high confidence interval. But what is clear is there's this idiosyncratic outperformance on everything gaming related over the last 2 months. A lot of the games building on Immutable today are finding it easier to raise early stage rounds. They're thinking now is a reasonable time to be launching tokens. This is a completely different market to what it was 3-4 months ago. And it's not across the board. It's just localized on gaming. And the second funny thing is that this is essentially without any mega hits. This is the very start when we haven't even seen what it's like when a single game has more daily active users than all the rest of Web3 combined. Or we start to properly fix these fundamental user onboarding issues and solve some of the problems that will allow us to get to tens of millions of players. So it's definitely exciting. I think it's definitely the start. Rather than what we could see the potential maturing into. But I think it's also indicative of the fact that right now, if you look at applications who are building long-term positive sum value, rather than moving money around with incentives with a local audience of 1 million crypto people, games is probably the strongest and most reliable business outside of payments. You have people who are building something consumers inherently want to spend money on and spend time on. And they're doing it in a way where the value proposition of Web3, I think, is unmistakably clear. Instead of $150 billion of assets you can never sell, it's now you can sell this stuff for value. You can own and trade and use it interoperably. And you can build secondary financial markets on top. That will likely be an order of magnitude larger than the primary spot volume. And so I think it's partially a reflection of the fact that people have now been building for 3 years. There are games going live, and based on the sheer amount of funding that has gone into this, there are going to be hits. I think it's also self-recursive now that people see some value in marketing themselves on crypto Twitter because there's this noise being generated, that there's more incentives to do so. 6 months ago, the best thing to do, or 3 months ago, the best thing to do is just sit down and build. And that's what we've been doing for literally the last 2 years. Honestly, building in public is important for transparency, but it hasn't been important for narratives the last 2 years based on where the market's been at.
For you at Immutable, when you look at how the landscape is changing and the enthusiasm is starting to surge around this, does it change how you think about comms strategy or marketing strategy for Immutable instead of just focusing only on heads down building? How do you approach it?
Not really, honestly. I always think we've marketed via our products and the games building on our platform. If we're doing a good job, 100 million people will play a game building on Immutable, and that will be our marketing. People will use Immutable Passport, and they're going to be trading with IMX as the native gas currency and CKEVM. So I think that job is done. And the second thing is we just want to focus on long-term sustainable economies and sustainable games. None of our effort is placed on how can we do this exciting, short-lived, incentive-driven scheme over here, or something that will not lead to long-term recurring volume and recurring value proposition for gamers. So I think our path doesn't change. It just makes it easier for the games building on Immutable to get raises done, and obviously on the market side for them to have more firepower available there.
Well, speaking of Immutable strategy and Immutable wins, I suppose, really big news out yesterday, and I'm not sure if people really have grasped what a big deal this is, but you basically have the primary gaming platform over on Avalanche, which is Merit Circle, partnering with Immutable. This is a huge deal as far as I can tell. Walk folks through the origin of this partnership and give them a little bit more context for this.
Yeah, so we've known the Merit Circle / Beam team for a good while now, particularly Mark, who we've been working really closely with. And essentially to us, it was almost another version of Immutable Polygon, where for some reason, even though the tech stacks and the products they're building are not competitive, we've ended up competing in market. There are grants and investments going out to games that are ultimately just highly competitive. And I think it's quite expensive to compete with Immutable Polygon right now. It's expensive to compete with Merit Circle DAO if they have 100 million in cash, which they do, and it's completely inefficient. And it also increases the complexity of choice for developers. So the thought was very similar to how can we unify the stack, simplify choices for game developers, and make a much more powerful value proposition. And I think it's now pretty clear that the end game is, Immutable Polygon, Merit Circle / Beam added onto that. We're really, really excited. So again, yes, I think this is probably our biggest news apart from Polygon this year. We're going to be doing a ton of work with these guys on building basically best-in-class infrastructure around how do we get games live to market, how do we build primary sales infrastructure, distribution, how do we help these games build enormous communities on Immutable, and obviously they're going to have access to the now 210 plus well-funded games building on Immutable. They're going to have access to all of the Immutable stack we've built to optimize for user acquisition and adoption, to zkVM with Illuvium, so super gas efficient for games. We're very excited for what this is going to do for Web3 gaming.
So there's a lot there. Like you said, this is a big announcement on the order of the Polygon announcement. You've got $100 million in treasury for Merit Circle. You have an awesome team, obviously, there as well. Summarize this partnership, distill it down in one sentence for us. What's the takeaway?
I think it is the largest gaming DAO plus the largest Web3 gaming platform plus the largest blockchain scaling solution, Polygon, coming together to provide the one-stop shop for Web3 gaming. And again, this is, I think, one of many steps we will have in strategic consolidation and unification over the next 12 months. This is the opportunities that either the bear run or late winter or green shoots, however you want to describe the market right now, presents, which is people don't want to be massively inefficient. They want to find out how they can specialize, build exceptional products with long-term value, and they want to reduce costs and reduce unnecessary competition while they're doing this. But we're incredibly excited for what this is going to bring to the Immutable ecosystem and vice versa to the Beam ecosystem.
And it speaks to something we've talked about on this show before, which is that within the Web3 world, the competition isn't and shouldn't be against each other. It's really against the non-Web3 world, right? You're competing against the Fortnites, the League of Legends, whatever, right? Insert games there. And this really speaks to that. Is like, it's collaborative still in Web3 as it should be, because we're all trying to lift all of the boats here in Web3 gaming.
And obviously we're massive Ethereum fans. We're fans of fundamentally secure technology, decentralized technology. I think it's phenomenal to be able to bring more of these gaming powerhouses to Ethereum's ecosystem.
And speaking of immutable games, I am talking to Illuvium a little bit later in today's episode, but there are a number of games building on Immutable, including Illuvium, that have some fun announcements this week. I know Illuvium, I guess it was last week, announcing that they are on or going live on the Epic Game Store. Talk us through some of the announcements, what's going on in the world of immutable games.
So, I mean, there's a ton, actually. I'll touch on Illuvium at the start, which is obviously they've had their beta available to, I think, 20,000 people over the past 8 months or so. Their auto battler being, I think, the most mature of their 4 games. I've been playing the PvP Auto Battle Arena. I think it's probably the most polished Web3 game out there, or certainly in the top 3 or 4. And it's just clear that they're knowing the right moves to make in the market right now. I think the next step is just how do we figure out performance marketing at scale and then start to scale this to tens of millions of players. We also had the Game3 Awards, where I think there were 18 categories, and I think Immutable's games were nominated in more than 12. So a huge shout out to Gods Unchained, Metalcore, Shardbound, Illuvium, Ember Sword, Blocklords, Cross the Ages, The Bornless, terrifying. If you haven't seen the Bornless trailer, if you have the stomach for it, go watch it. It's actually quite scary. So yeah, I think that was awesome to see. We had Arena of Faith, which is a game building on us, featured on Google Play Store as a newly launched game, which is basically a MOBA with AI incorporated into casual play. We have Blocklords releasing their main trailer, Slay the Bear, which is looking exceptional. They've also just gone live on the Epic Store as well. And finally, Shardbound, from the former team that created Vainglory, the 100 million monthly active player hit on mobile, just launched a $5 million fundraise announcement. So huge congrats to them and to the Big Craft Ventures team who led that raise.
And actually, I will be sitting down with the Shardbound team for our next episode. So folks will be hearing more about all of that. All right, folks, that is our news for today. Coming up next, we've got our community spotlight. From our community, this person is concerned about all the bots that are inevitable in Web3 gaming. How do you think about approaching that and keeping games as bot-free as possible?
We think about this a lot. Again, this is the reason we build Immutable Studios. The reason we publish and build games internally is so we have to deal with these problems ourselves. In my opinion, there are sort of 2 main problems with bots in Web3. The first is sustainable economies and rewards. And how do you make sure you're not inflating your economy through bots and creating unsustainable rewards? And I actually think the approach here can be done even with bots. And that's essentially by, I mean, the industry has shifted generally away from play to earn. I think the trend is now towards how can you just have people who would ordinarily spend $10 on a skin now get the property rights for that skin and be able to sell it later on. And I think there certainly is room for incentives, but they have to be underwritten by the value that they're bringing to the economy. In order to essentially, you should assume that there's going to be bots. Does your incentive or reward scheme work, even if there are 1 million or 10 million or 1 billion bots all playing at the most sophisticated level? Because right now, they may not be able to play, but in 5 or 10 years, with AI being much more generally capable at learning new games very quickly, they will beat human pro players in pretty much any skilled game from week 1, whereas that's very different to what we had in the past. So I think that's the assumption that game developers need to have when designing their economies. We have a lot of, this is what we've essentially built things like Guild of Guardians with, and we share all of these learnings with our games. And the second thing is, well, how do you actually make sure your users are real? And there are multiple approaches here. I think there's obviously the KYC / wallet approach. I think this is something we want to support, but it's not something we want to restrict or mandate for games building on our platform. And I think the second thing is just having this sort of persistent identity in Web3, which over time you can build credibility attached to. And there's multiple ways that people are trying to solve this identity problem right now. You have Sam Altman with WorldCoin and Alex Blania. You have people looking at, just essentially KYC in order to play or earn rewards. You have some form of heuristics or algorithmic-based model where you can get banned over time, and maybe you only give value to people once they've proven a certain contribution of value to the ecosystem. We're going to support as many of these as possible and is required by games. There's flexible requirements. But ultimately, Passport as an identity ecosystem is going to be incredibly valuable, because what you'll be able to do is say, hey, give me 10 million customers who have paid for value on all these other games and who we know are very likely to be real players, and they can immediately become the distribution base for any new games coming on board the platform. So that's part of our goal with all of this being integrated into Immutable Passport.
Love it. If you would like your question featured on Between Two Layers, comment below. Let us know below. We read through them and we'll pull out the ones that we think are interesting. And now I sat down with Kieran Warwick, co-founder of Illuvium, to talk what is next for Illuvium. You've heard a little bit about it from Robbie so far. Amazing things happening on that game. So very excited for you to hear this conversation with Kieran. I am here with Kieran Warwick, not Warwick, if you're a true Australian, co-founder of Illuvium. Kieran, thank you so much for being back. I always love chatting with you.
Thanks for having me on, Carly. What's happening?
Not much, man. I'm just excited to dive into everything you are doing. And I actually want to start, before we get into Illuvium itself, Illuvium is such an awesome, exciting, frankly, hyped game. I'm really curious about your perspective on the Web3 gaming ecosystem broadly right now. Where do you feel like we are in the, let's call it adoption curve, the innovation cycle? I don't know how you want to frame that, but would love to just get your high level thoughts there before we dive in deeper.
Yeah, so I think it's very interesting. The amount of games that we had coming out back in 2021 was just insane, right? It was like everyone was building a game. And I feel like the bear market has sort of filtered out a lot of the teams that didn't really have much substance, didn't have much backing or anything like that. And so, which is a good thing, right? Because you're left with, I would say there's probably 20 to 30 games that I would actually say can start competing and taking users from typical mainstream games. And that spans across many different genres, but yeah, it's been a crazy sort of 2 years, and I think we're just getting to the point where these good games are going to start coming out, and that's when we'll really see our space take off, and eventually it'll blend into not being our own space, and it'll just be these games that have ownership inside of them, and it'll just be normal.
20 to 30 is not bad. 20 to 30, that could really have potential. I know Robbie always says, like, one key game is going to onboard, 100 times more people than like anything into Web3 than anything else can do. So if you've got 20 to 30 shots to hit that, that's pretty exciting, to be honest.
Yeah, no, it's definitely good. We share the same vision in terms of that.
So let's talk about Illuvium a little bit more specifically for folks who maybe aren't familiar with it. I think you should give some broad strokes, and maybe as part of doing that, explaining Illuvium a little bit, talk about where you are in terms of playability, who can go on and play right now, what parts of this expansive game can be played. Give us a sense of all that.
Yeah, so we're actually, we just got over our third year of since ideation, which is pretty decent chunk of time. When you talk about building a AAA game, it's usually between that 3 to 5 year mark. So we are. But
you guys are building like 3 AAA games. You're like 5 games.
That's the problem.
One.
Yeah, so that's the problem. And then when you throw in Illuvium Beyond into it, it gets a little crazy. So where we're at now is Illuvium Zero. That's our mobile game that you can play if you have a piece of land, and that's like a city builder, which is the economies. That's where you generate all of the different fuels that are required across all the games inside of the universe, the current ones and any new games that we end up building with the IP. So that's live now, where you can play it in its alpha state. Then you've got Illuvium Overworld, which is our huge exploration game where it's a creature capturer. The idea is there's 200 plus alluvials, which are these creatures that roam this world, and your job is to go around and essentially figure out what is going on here. You've crash landed on this mysterious planet. You've got these weird things running around, and yeah, so you go through this overworld and you capture these alluvials, and then so overworld is in beta state as well, which is private. So I think we've only let 30,000 people in. And then you've got Arena, which is what I'm most excited about, where you take those alluvials that you've caught and like the armor and the weapons that you forged from the overworld, and you bring them into a competitive game where it's an auto battler. So you've got two teams on either side, and you're trying to counter your opponent to essentially beat them. And with that, you've got things like leaderboards and tournaments, and we've got a bunch of esporting teams which are we're going to activate, which are super interested in joining. And Arena is currently in private beta 2, so it's second iteration. But PvP, we're not saying a date yet, but it is coming out very, very soon. I wanted to be able to play it with you guys today, but we're a little bit off. But yeah, that's what's coming.
Just means people will have to tune back in, follow up with you guys again. You have a good YouTube as well. I'll give a plug to the Illuvium YouTube, where there's a lot of pre-release game footage or characters or various things that you guys put up there. It's been a minute since I checked, but last time I was on there, it was a lot of good stuff. So folks will just have to go and check out there for when you have the next update.
That's right. Yeah, we try and be as transparent as possible with our build.
Yeah, you do a good job. I mean, obviously that's baked into your whole ecosystem, like the DAO structure that you have. Actually, why don't you share a little bit about that for folks who are unfamiliar, the DAO structure that you've set up and how that works within the whole gaming ecosystem?
Yeah, so not only do we want to be the first AAA game inside of the blockchain space that goes live, we decided to make it a DAO. And so we're truly decentralized. We have been since inception, actually even pre ILV launching our native token. And what that means is all of our token holders vote in a council, and the council is made up of 5 members, and that council will essentially vote on any proposals that token holders create. So, it might be changes to our DeFi elements. It might be changes to the games. It might be even a game itself, saying Illuvium 0 had to go through, when we had that idea, we had to build a proposal and say, this is what we're thinking in order to turn this into essentially the financial hub of all the other games. And yeah, that goes through this governance system. And we can only do what the council says we can do, right? When it comes to building new things and improving the protocol. So it's kind of scary, and it's definitely had its ups and its downs, but I think it's definitely net positive, but it's a brand new way of building a game. So it's kind of crazy.
You're taking a lot on at once is always the theme whenever we chat. I'm like, there's a lot happening here. It's a lot. Folks can go listen to it if they want to dive deeper into this. I think we had an hour-long conversation that really gave this whole overview previously on Between Two Layers. So folks can go listen to that. I want to pivot now, though, to get into the actual gameplay, some of the new stuff that's coming out. I want to start with this. Do you have a favorite game you mentioned Overworlds, 0 and Arena? Oh, you said Arena was your favorite. Is that what you said? Or you're most excited about it?
Well, here's the thing. I think it will be. So I was a massive Pokemon fan growing up, and that was the whole idea, right? We wanted to create this IP that could finally take over Pokemon. And so you look at our graphics and our creatures, we've gone so in depth in terms of the actual alluvials. They all have this kind of this allure to try and bring someone in where, like Pokemon did it, where you'd say, I like Snorlax because, he's lazy and he does these cool abilities and stuff like that. We built that into every single character. And so traveling around the overworld and encountering these creatures, I think is going to be super awesome. And then when you talk about having the ability to own them and then, go onto the marketplace, which is powered by IMX, and be able to instantly sell these things. that's pretty compelling to me. But at the same time, one game that I've been really, really addicted to that is our main competitor when it comes to Arena is Teamfight Tactics. I've been playing that game for like 5 or 6 years now. I know Robbie's a big fan of TFT as well. And that's what PvP is. The reason I'm not saying it's 100% Arena right now is we've only got survival mode that's available. So you're not actually playing against another player, you're playing against the computer. So it doesn't have that like competitive, like, damn it, why did he just, he's better than me, he beat me. You don't get that addictiveness. And so I think it will be Arena, but, I'm not 100% sure.
So let me see if I have this right. So your answer was you love the overworld thing because you love looking at the alluvials. It triggers the like boy in you who loved Pokemon and
Yes.
that's right now. However, what's coming out with Arena but isn't out yet as we're recording this conversation is the PvP side of Arena, and you're expecting that that's really gonna fully just trigger your now man desire for the mano a mano competition. Is that?
Yes.
Is that
Yeah,
okay? And we're recording this, but I think we will, by the time this airs, have footage of the PvP. Does that mean it's coming out in the closed beta soon? Or give us more context into the PvP, how that's going to work and when folks can see it?
So we've been testing it now. We actually have done a few weeks now. We've had internal competitions where we do tournaments and stuff like that. And it's so close to being released, but because it's been 3 years in the making, we want to make sure that it's super polished, it doesn't have any bugs, and it's a really good experience. And the other thing that we're doing is we're actually making it open, right? Where previously only a certain amount of people have been able to play our games. In this update, we're saying literally anyone can join. We've got 1.5 million people that have registered over the last 3 years, and so it's pretty exciting.
And that's across all 3 games. Obviously, the Zero's already open beta, right? But you're saying with this update that's going to bring the PvP, both Arena and Overworld are moving out of closed beta, open beta. Wow.
So it's not open beta because open beta is when we actually turn on our economy. It's essentially early access. So rather than it being, you have to be selected to be able to join, we're saying anyone can join now. And the reason is in this matchmaking, you don't want an experience where there's not enough people playing. Like you want to just say, looking for an opponent, and 30 seconds later, you find someone and you're matched up. And so to do that, we really want to get our active players up. And we think this is the first step in doing that. And
Got it. That makes sense. It leads me to a question I wanted to ask that's maybe a little bit more technical, but like around matchmaking for the PvP side, how are you thinking about that? Is some of that going to be worked out when you actually start seeing people use that feature and get ranked with each other? And like, how do you make those determinations?
So it's a typical ELO system, which is used widely across many, many games, where you'll get a ranking, and the idea will be that you'll get ranked up with someone in the same bracket. So there's you'll go through, there's bronze, silver, gold, and it goes right the way up to the top. And so the idea is there, when you first join the game, you're not being placed up against someone who's ridiculously good at it. You get wrecked and you're like, well, I hate this game, I'm leaving. It's like beginners play beginners, intermediate plays intermediate, and then so on and so on and so on. So that's kind of how you get matched up.
Are you already gold? Have you been playing this enough? Have you been testing it enough that you'll come out the gate hot?
No, so the frustrating thing with our devs, it makes sense, but they all are PC players. And so I don't know if they're just screwing with me or whatever, but like they always update the PC build, and then they're like, oh, right, we have those 3 people that play on Mac, we should probably update it. And so we get to this tournament, and I'm like, hey, are we playing last week's build? And they're like, no, there's an updated build. I'm like, there's not. And they're like, Right, the Mac one. And so, yeah.
Well, because aren't all true aren't like true gamers? I'm about to insult you. Aren't they PC gamers?
They are too. And I've got a PC here. I don't like to use it for business stuff. And so I don't know. It'll be worked out once we go live with it. Obviously the Mac build will be there, but for me, it's kind of frustrating, but I don't also have a massive amount of time to play, but there will definitely be much, much better players than me, no doubt.
All right, fair enough. I have to ask Robbie, and the next time he's on a call, I want to find out is he in the closed beta? I mean, not that he has time in his life to play anything else either, but I know he's super excited about Illuvium.
Yeah, he is. He's played survival mode for a bunch, but like most people that play it, like you play for a few weeks and then you're like over it, right? Like you almost beat the game by getting to the highest level, and then it's like there's no more progression. So that's why you're
saying that PvE mode.
Yeah,
is that what you're describing there? Yeah. And is that the biggest difference? And is like once you're playing against other people, it's sort of limitless in terms of how competitive it can get and how high the ceiling is. Whereas right now, there's a ceiling.
Yeah, and it's like any game, right? As soon as you've got a ranking system and you see yourself earning these badges, and then in terms of us, we've got added benefits in that the higher you go up on the leaderboards, the more you earn, right? So there's so many different elements that go into the gamification of keeping people in.
Yeah,
it's the reason that gamers are like not going and going to dinner, and they're like, no, I've got one more meeting. It's like, no, you don't. And I'm not talking about me or anything like that.
Yeah, no, of course not. It's like when Robbie's like, everybody on my team is addicted to Gods Unchained. They're like now the new the thing we're like playing it in meetings. I mean, not really in meetings, but like
100%.
Okay, let's chat about Beyond Wave 2, which is like the next series in the NFT drops and the Illuvatars.
Yeah.
Give an overview of this as well, and connect this up to the broader system we've been talking about.
Yeah, so right now Beyond is it sits to the side. It obviously uses the same IP, but how it sort of interconnects into the ecosystem is your profile photo across all of the different games is used by is an Illuvatar, which is what we're calling it. And on top of that, you've also got the ability to sleeve them, and there's albums and stuff like that. And so you're basically collecting these side NFTs and filling your collection. And as you do that, you unlock things in the game. So it might be like a unique emote, or it might be a skin for your ranger. And so you're trying to collect these things, and they'll be super rare because some of them are hard milestones to achieve, but you'll unlock it. And then next time you go into PvP, some guy is going to have this crazy ranger skin, and you're going to be like, what's going on? So it's a little bit of a cosmetic flex to be able to have it. And it's a way to fill the needs of people that just love collecting things. And the artwork is super cool as well.
It is really cool. How many are out right now? We've got this next set coming out, but how many do you have at this point?
So this is our second wave. And there's 25 alluvials per wave, and then we do a promotion. Now, last wave, our promotion was with GameStop, which was a pretty big success. We sold, I think it was something like 700,000 in total over a week, and this next wave, I'm pretty excited about our promotional partner. I can't say who it is, but it's an esports team.
Okay.
And they're a very, very big esports team. They're top 10 in the world, and we're pretty excited about that too. When
does it drop? Is there an official date for this new set?
It's actually just going through governance now. It's a bit of a it's a pointy topic in between where we it was meant to be I would say in the next 2 or 3 weeks. But we've done a pretty crafty thing with in terms of this promotional wave, because they're an esports team. I wanted to integrate them into the PvP mode, because these guys are all professional TFT players, Hearthstone players, and League of Legends players. I took the opportunity where I was like, we can do the Illuvitar's integration, but it sort of doesn't make sense unless they're, really loving the IP, playing the different games that we have. And so it's a way for us to really kill two birds with one stone, in that we will have this collection over here, and instead of us going out and spending, hundreds of thousands of dollars on marketing and getting these influencers to play, they're doing that as part of the deal. And so with that, we just moved PvP back a few months, and so it meant that we basically needed to move this collection back. And some people are like, hey, these are meant to stop being sold at this point. And I'm like, I know, but we need to extend the wave. Otherwise, it's going to conflict with what we're trying to do with this partner.
Got it.
And it's interesting, right? Like I said, at the end of the day, if you guys deny this proposal to extend the wave, we have to adhere to that, right? Like that's the perils of having governance. But I think, it's about 70-30 that people are accepting it, but it's always tough to navigate this stuff.
Totally. So am I understanding this correctly, in that you have this amazing esports partner and you're trying to have this all-encompassing deal where you're going to have these, famous, well-known players playing in the PvP arena game, and you want them to have these cosmetic components that are from the Illuvatars. And so that's the dream. But because PvP got pushed back, you then need the Illuvitar, or you need the Beyond Wave 2 sale to be pushed back to correspond with it, so that this is all happening at once. But communicating that to a group of DAO members means that things get lost in translation, and some of them understand and some of them have other perspectives on it and maybe don't even. Is that the summary here?
100%. And I get it, right? Like
totally.
The thing about NFT drops, if there's meant to be a finite amount, right? In this case, you can go and mint that. It's not a 10,000 or 20,000 collection. It goes for a 3-month period, then it stops. Now, if you're inside of that 3-month period where you bought a whole bunch of these, and you're thinking in 5, 6, 7 years time, if Illuvium IP blows up to be as big as it is, I don't want more of those minted, right? Like extending it means that you're theoretically diluting me. And so there's that argument there where people are like, well, sure, we want this partner, but we don't want you to actually sell more Illuvitars. So it's this, I don't know, it's tough, but I think it'll go through. I think common sense will prevail.
Okay. Is there any alpha you can give us about this set? Maybe that's not known or only like partially known, or like how much has been revealed about this set to begin with?
So I can't, because it's all about the Illuvitars are all based on the brand that we're partnering with, and so it's like I was so close to just saying the brand is there, but yeah, it's they're all of these Illuvitars, like the GameStop ones. We dress them up, so the whole idea is that when Jesus, we should definitely edit that out. When
okay, well, do we have to?
Yeah, when the esports team is playing the game, and then they're going out there and they're saying, we partnered with Illuvium, and here are these really cool digital collectibles. We want it to be on brand. And so we've dressed them up in all of the cool things that people go, that's what I love about this team. So we'll stop with that.
Okay, love it. last question. Anything else? What else is anything else on the horizon that we need to talk about? I mean, there's so much you guys have coming up, but anything we've missed here that you wanna shout out?
I think we've covered most of it. Just that we're going into open beta very, very soon, right? Where the economy starts, you'll be able to start capturing these alluvials. You'll be able to start trading them, selling them, all of that kind of stuff. And it's been a long, long journey, right? Like we initially didn't have the same amount of scope that we do now. And we've got a lot of hype behind us. A lot of people are waiting. And I think after PvP is seen, it will really start falling into place and people will understand the vision that we have.
Very cool. Where should folks go if they want to make sure they're getting all the alerts they need to know when these things are fully live?
Definitely Discord. That's where all of our updates begin from. Then obviously social media, so Twitter, we're very, very active on there. But definitely encouraging people to join the Discord. That's where a lot of the robust discussion is, if I'll just say that.
There's sometimes fights, there's sometimes love, everything in between. Fair
Everything
enough.
you'd love to see in a gaming server, yeah.
Awesome. Kieran, thank you so much for joining us again. I really appreciate it. I know y'all are swamped over there with everything you have coming out, but it's always fun to catch up and just cannot wait to see where y'all go from here.
Thanks for having me. Really good to be on.
Next up, we have a final thoughts with Robbie Ferguson. So Immutable's been growing massively. You've got the Ubisoft partnership, the Amazon partnership, just this Merit Circle partnership that was just announced. Talk a little bit about this and where you are growth-wise and then the market.
Yeah, so look, I think we estimate our market share above 70% today based on either the number of games or the size of the games, which I think is a really healthy market leadership and has done a lot to simplify the choice for developers. I expect that number to increase significantly with this Merit Circle partnership and for us to, them to grow significantly off the back of it too. And our favorite partnerships are win-win, which is why we focus so much on going deep with the Polygon team, etc. We've had over 100 games well-funded, so 7 to 8 figures in funding, built on Immutable since the announcement of the partnership. So basically more than doubling our top-tier pipeline. And the long tail has continued to exploit to tens of thousands of developers building on self-serve. I think it's pretty clear at this point Web3 gaming is going to happen. There will be hits next year. If you even look at the games launched over the last 10 days, we have Cursed Stone, Corpo World, Dark Machine Game, Blade of God X, Arcbound PR, Galactico Manager, Shardbound raising 5 mil, Space Falcon. The total funding to these games is in multiple 8 figures, and each of them has enough to be a potential of being a hit. That's literally just the last 9, 10 days. But the most important thing, I think, is we must remember what the ultimate goal of what we're building is. This is not to get games with 5,000 people in crypto excited about playing them and shiny objects and tokens with high valuations in the short term. It's about how do we change an industry where people do not get any property rights for stuff they buy just because they're intangible, just because you can't touch them. And the time we'll have been successful is when a meaningful percentage of free-to-play games with multiplayer as a component start to shift towards, hey, how do we give people actual meaningful ownership with Web3? And how do those players not even know that it's Web3 under the hood? And so I think until we have a game with 1 million, 10 million daily active players, until we start having players demand this, we have not really made a true dent in the industry. Because ultimately, if you're looking at $150 billion spent, the addressable market, if we can make that open, is more like $1 trillion. You will have mortgages and DeFi and loans all built on top of this primary spot volume on digital assets. We already have lending a huge core part of what Illuvium is building. So if we get this right, not only will we change how players own digital ownership for in-game items, but we'll change the precedent by which most unique value is owned. To be self-custodial, to be tokenized, to have far better financial utility, to have far better liquidity, and ultimately, and this is my favorite thing, to be cooperatively owned by everyone. That's the entire intent of IMX. Every single time you trade, every single time you play a game, you are owning a piece of the end protocol. I'm excited for that too. With the motivation and systems of capitalism of which the entire world runs, to make a far more equitable and far more decentralized form of ownership for the vast majority of value creating entities, whether it's a game, whether it's a DAO, whether it's a company, whether it's a coin, or whether it's a network. That's our view. We have to remain utterly focused on this mission and make sure we're just genuinely creating product market fit at massive scale.
That is our show today, folks. Thank you so much for joining. If you enjoyed this, again, please do subscribe to the channel, comment below, shoot us a like. We really appreciate it. And we will see you next time. I'll see you, Robbie.
Thanks, Carly. See you soon.